Hi, everyone. It's Jen, and today we're going to be talking about surrender. Is there something that you have been holding on to so tightly and you're not even sure you want to let it go, much less have you tried? If that's the case, whether that something is something you've lost, a loved one, a job, an imagined future, and so maybe you're grieving and you're hanging on. Or perhaps you are holding on to something that you feel like you have to have to continue living life as you know it. Whatever the reason is, if you have not yet considered surrender, or you've considered it, but you don't quite know how to do it, this video is for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Jen Tarrant. I am a yoga therapist and a holistic lifestyle coach, and I am so glad you're here. Let's get into it. All right, so surrender. You guys, not an easy thing to do, right? We have these things that we hold on to for whatever reason. Maybe it's something we've lost. Maybe it's something we feel like we can't live without. And before we know it, we are gripping so tightly to that something that we don't even realize we are doing it. And we certainly may not realize how to begin that process of letting go. But today I'm going to talk about how we can get into that using some yoga. All right, so here's some things that we know for sure. Whenever we are having that gripping feeling in our hands, in our body, in our mind or emotions, whatever that thing is that we're holding on so tightly to, we are actually causing ourselves more pain, more upset, maybe more frustration, possibly more grief, the tighter we hold. When we hold on to something that much, we actually make our own experience more difficult rather than better. Even if that something we're holding on to is something we love. Maybe it's the home we live in, the job we have, the people that we love in our life. When we hold on to them and we're like grasping at whatever that person or that thing is, we make our life more difficult. And so when we think about this possibility of what would it mean for me to surrender? What would that look like? And how do I do it? Yoga has some ways to make that a little more of a possibility, and it's using postures in the body. One of the things that my husband loves to say to our kids, especially when they were little, is emotion follows motion. And so when they were upset, he would have them put a smile on their face. And before you knew it, they were giggling and having a good time again. He was right. Whenever we put our body in certain postures, we're able to change the way we feel. Look no further than sitting all slumped over. And when we sit this way, it's easy to feel down. It's easy to feel sad. It's easy to feel depressed. But if we sit up and take our shoulders and relax them back, we can't help but begin to feel a little bit better. We feel lighter. We feel more open to possibility. And so we're using that same idea here today as we talk about surrender. So I have a few postures. You can see I have the mat set up on the floor. I know we usually do standing or seated things together, but for today's video, we're going to do some floor postures. If you want to follow along, or you want to come back to this video, a mat on the floor, or if you don't have a yoga mat, a beach towel laid out on the floor would work really well. Also, you could also do this either on the couch or on your bed. There is a posture where we'll be laying our head on our hands and we'll be on our front. In that case, you may want a little extra elevation for your head so that you have enough space for your nose and mouth so you can breathe. Our first posture is called Sphinx Pose. And so we'll get into that posture. It is, as I mentioned, on the front of our body. And so we'll turn over onto the front. And for this posture, we'll have our forearms on the mat and our elbows kind of right underneath our shoulders. And in this posture, what we're looking for is a lift up. So we're not relaxing toward the floor, we're lifting up. And as best as we can, drawing our shoulders back and our heart forward. This is hard to see, but you'll definitely feel it if you're practicing with me. So we'll lift tall, we'll draw our shoulders back and our heart forward. And here in this posture, we can feel this opening across the chest, and we can ask ourselves if we feel ready to explore surrender. And if the answer is yes, we can continue in this posture, lifting tall, heart reaching forward, allowing ourselves to open that front of the body so that we can allow ourselves to release and surrender. It's possible, though, you guys, for our answer to be no. Today, I'm not ready. I thought maybe I was, turns out I'm not. And if that's the case, or whenever we're done with this posture, we can move into the next one, which is called wisdom posture. And I love that this one's called wisdom posture because it's recognizing our own inherent wisdom to know when it's time to rest. And so we'll place our hands on the mat and our forehead right on top of our hands. In this wisdom posture, and please feel free to stay, I'll prop myself up to talk. When we rest here in this way and we place our forehead on our hands, we're allowing ourselves some time to be introspective. We're allowing ourselves a moment to rest and to shut out the distractions around us because we're facing downward. And so this posture can be really, really nurturing and really, really helpful, either after we've experienced this big openness of Sphinx Pose, or when we recognize what we really need here is a little bit more rest. We'll spend a few moments in this wisdom posture, letting our forehead rest on our hands. Maybe we'll take 3 or 4 breaths here. And then to come out of this posture, we can prop up again. And our next one will be laying on our backs. We'll simply roll over onto our back now. And I'd suggest starting with knees pointing upward, back resting on the mat. And our next one here is bridge pose. And so we have some options here. We can actively lift into bridge pose, feeling our hips lift up nice and high. We feel the muscles of our quads and back in our glutes and hamstrings, working to lift our hips up. And I would suggest this one if we feel like we can really embrace surrender and we're ready to move forward. But if we're feeling a little more tentative about that, or perhaps we're not ready for such a big move, then I would suggest placing a folded blanket or maybe a pillow or a yoga block underneath the hips and doing a supported bridge. A supported bridge creates the same shape in the body, but is less robust. And this bridge pose is going to help us recognize that as we do the surrendering postures, we're creating a bridge forward into our future, into what life has awaiting us on the other side. And so we can take this gentle approach, we can take the more robust approach, actively lifting hips upward. We'll choose one or the other and allow ourselves to recognize this bridge forward. We can hang out here for several breaths if we like, or we can take a little less time here if we find we're feeling ready to move on. We can do that at any time. And if we're using a support underneath, then we can go ahead and move that out of the way. We also recognize as we move through our life that different twists and turns happen through life, right? And so we'll do a little twisting posture here to remind us about that, and also to recognize that twists and turns in life are not always bad. Sometimes they're actually totally great. So we'll allow our knees to drop over to one side. If we'd like to take that bigger twist, we can move our hips over so that our knees end up stacking one on top of the other. So we'll choose either variation of the twist and allow ourselves to feel this big sensation across the waist. And as we hold here in this posture, we're recognizing that. Twists and turns come our way. Some of them are welcome, maybe some are less welcome, but either way, we know that we can continue to move forward no matter what happens. Let's take another breath or two here. And then as we finish that next breath, let's bring our legs through the center and then take that twist the other way. Again, letting our knees simply rest over that direction, or we can scoot our hips to the other side so that our knees stack more. We get that bigger sensation right across the waist. And, here we can realize that those twists and turns sometimes go different directions. Sometimes we get twisted and turned one way. Sometimes we get twisted and turned the other way. Along with these twists and turns of life, we may recognize that different opportunities come our way. Maybe we meet someone that we would not have met otherwise. Maybe an opportunity arises that we had no idea was coming. So all these twists and turns of life can bring lots of unexpected surprises and even lead us to a deeper sense of joy. One or two more breaths here in this rotation. And then as we come back to the center, if we moved our hips over, let's put them back in a neutral, and then we can choose a restful position. Maybe we take our feet wide and let our knees rest together, kind of like the shape of a tent. Or we may choose to stretch our legs all the way out and rest with our body laid completely flat. So we'll choose whichever one of these we like and allow our body some time to embrace this practice. We spent some time opening the chest, and then we laid our head down to recognize our own wisdom. We moved through a bridge pose to recognize that path forward, and some twisting postures to recognize that the journey has all kinds of surprises. And so as we take a few more breaths here in this restful posture, we're simply allowing our mind and our body to embrace the practice, to accept what is, so that we have experienced, hopefully, at least a little glimmer of surrender. Whenever we feel ready, we can then turn over onto one side and press ourselves up to a seated position again. All right, dragonflies, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found these postures useful. What I'd like to know from you today is, which posture did you like the most? Let me know in the comments and let's talk about it. Until next week, bye for now.